Two. One. Wait, not one. Not yet. Hold on. Almost there. Alrighty. So, today is not really a topic, and I think that I maybe cut myself out of the picture a little bit too much. Let me adjust the camera.
Emily wanted to see us. I just sent her the link.
So, let me just move the setup a little bit so we can see. Get the X split set up correctly. And this is, so what we're doing here is just a quick, or an interview about the struggles of building and kind of where both Chris and Logan were before I met them in their build. And I think that's a really good place to start. So, Chris, before I met you, and I do know that you were going through some struggles, what was going on at that point? You know, because we all obviously, we want the same thing. We all want horsepower, and we want to be able to enjoy the car and make it usable and reliable. So, give us a little idea of what was going on with you and your car. What was going on?
So, bought the car stock, got some full bolt-ons in with some local mechanic. The local mechanic messed up on an installation.
Can you speak up just a little bit because the microphone doesn't fit? You don't have to point it towards the mic.
Yeah, so
just speak up a little bit.
Local mechanic fucked up on the installation, and the turbo gasket got sucked into the OEM turbo, fucked up the turbo. So I bought,
F-bombs.
Oh, we can't do that?
We can, but let's try not to.
Okay.
Let's try not to. That's alright. I get into the frustration. I get it. I totally get it. I'm on the same page.
And so, bought the MHI, got it tuned immediately by a pretty well-known tuner. It never ran right. I had a bunch of boost cut issues. Got multiple tunes from him trying to fix it. I eventually...
So, and I believe this is the point where you had, I believe, called me because you had a problem shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
So, what was going on with the car? What was your problem when you initially called me?
So, the car just wouldn't start.
Okay, so I just want to clarify the boost cut issues. This is definitely a problem that could have been resolved. Chris, how many pounds of boost were you running? You were on 93 at this time, correct?
Yes.
And how many pounds of boost on 93 on the MHI was he saying? Well, what the the previous tuner said was normal.
22.
Okay.
Which was insane.
Is low. So to clarify this, all right, I should say that 22 pounds is definitely low. I think generally on a good stock fuel system that's in good shape, we see around 26 to 27 is very normal on 93, and 22 pounds indication like something's going on. Now, did this individual that was tuning the car, did they give you any information? What did they tell you?
They said the car was fine.
And you ran somebody who was, if I'm correct, they were on what? They were on a stock turbo, right?
Yeah, stock turbo, regular full bolt-on.
And to clarify for folks what happened,
I got gapped.
Alright, so at this point, now you guys know that Chris' car's got an upgraded turbo. He lost to a stock turbo car, and now it won't start. So Chris called me, and how were your feelings at point with the car at this point? What were you feeling?
I was 100% ready to sell it. Like, I was going to get it fixed by you or whoever at that point and just sell it.
So Chris's problems pointed to possible BCM issue, which wasn't a guarantee, but Chris was 6 hours away. He towed the car 6 hours away. Just didn't seem like a feasible thing to possibly, if there was a BCM issue, to have to just take it to my dealer and have the BCM programmed if that was the issue. However, I told him, I said, why not at least, since the dealer's a lot closer to you, have them at least give you an initial diagnosis and see if we can take it from there to save them some money. And I also convinced them to not sell the car. What was the problem? And
the low pressure fuel pump failed, but it was an installation error because I had a Deutschwerks 300.
Right.
And it was installed right before I got tuned, and why I was asking the tuner, are you sure that my fuel trims, everything looks good? Because it could be bad. And he was like, yeah, it's fine.
So, to clarify what happened here, and I see this a lot, the install error created a lack of delivery to the low pressure pump. Now, while the low pressure pump might not just be like spiking, you should have a certain amount of fuel delivery. And how you know is the combination between your injector duty cycle and your high pressure pump duty cycle. And clearly this didn't match. I'm sorry if I have to scoot over, that's because the screen kind of blacks out. So basically, essentially, the person who's tuning the car didn't notice, and I don't like to disclose names, but I'm just going to say it was a very well-known, it's a currently well-known person too as well, and a lot of people are all about this person, but this is the same as him. So, you got it fixed, right? And so then from there...
We got it fixed, yeah.
Right, and then from there, you brought the car to me to install the fuel system for motors, correct?
Yeah.
And get it tuned.
Yeah, basically.
And from there, we initially, you had, what, stop cat back exhaust, correct?
Yep.
And the catted downpipe, correct? And we explained that this was a restriction, and his goal was 500, right? So we explained the restriction. And when we got catless downpipe, so you made what that time, 492 or 496? 492. So, said, the only exhaust I'll ever recommend, the same thing I tell everybody else, is the R400 exhaust, and we changed that, and the catless downpipe, and you then made what on the same exact setup?
516.
Yeah, this went from a person who wanted to sell the car. Chris, what are you doing to the car now?
Yeah, so the car now is build head, cams.
Yes, and we're going to leave one detail out, but you can put the fuel system stuff in there.
2000cc injectors.
And we're gonna leave one detail out, but nothing super complicated.
Meth, I guess.
Yeah, we're adding methanol. We're adding methanol. So, Logan, your struggles have been a little bit different, but generally been a little bit more lucky with your initial setup, except for the previous owner. I want to say maybe it has some.
Yeah, it might have had something to do with it. So when I first got to know John, I first bought this car wanting to keep it as it was. Somebody had put an exhaust on it, catless downpipe, intake, strut tower bar, just some basic stuff. And I daily drove it for a while. I got close to paying it off and decided, seeing everybody that was making 500 on stock motor, you needed fuel system, turbo, intercooler. I decided I wanted to do that, so I bought John's fuel system, and then I decided to go to him for some advice. He willingly helped me out, and we eventually got it together, and it made good numbers. His knowledge it's been very worthwhile.
So we did run into, and I believe that this was not an issue with Logan at all, like his initial stock clutch wearing out. So I don't believe this was an issue at all with his. And when you first bought the car, you did say that you were having some issues with the transmission, correct?
Yeah, so second gear would grind periodically. I'd have the clutch to the floor before I moved the lever, stop and go traffic, and it's gotten worse. It's to the point the car won't even go in the second now. So
we can't really be mad at the car anymore now. Why?
It's been some of me. I've been putting it off, building it to a certain level, and it's about ready to get done up fully to where I want it. Second and third would grind periodically. Third and fourth did once. I swapped the fluid out. It helped some, but it would still grind on one too.
Unfortunately, a lot of people previously just forced the crap out of the transmission, and that's just kind of what happens sometimes, So Logan, you are having a different. So you're obviously progressing to a slightly further point in your build, but let's talk about what's going on with your car now that eventually you just said, you know what, I want to build it anyway. But it's an actual known problem. But Logan, I want you to tell them something about what's going on with it now. The motor's not. The internal components of the motor are not hurt, but this is a common problem. So go ahead.
So it was about 2 weeks after I paid it off. I was enjoying it, and I'd come to stop at a stoplight, I'd pop it out a second, pretty much, and I'd put the transmission in neutral. The engine RPMs would come down below 1500 as I come to a stop at a turn, stoplight, what have you, and a P0016 code would come in for cam timing, and I'd have to go clear it in on data. And eventually it got so bad I'd have to shut the car off, clear it, fire it up. It would start becoming more frequent to the point it even would start cutting boost, period, and preventing VTEC RPM, so 4500, and that's it in each gear. And sometimes it would give me boost even with the code. It would cut up top, and then I did one thing one day where I decided to do a pull with it because I missed it, and I figured I'd have a built engine together soon. That's finally about done with the if I can say with the Calford cams arriving. I'm finally about to stop waiting and stop sinking money into other parts of it and get it together. And I kissed the rev limiter once, and the code stayed on permanently, so it just proves it's a cam sensor.
So it's not. So for clarification, it's not that the engine's actually hurt itself. What happens is that the cam reluctor is pressed onto the end of the intake camshaft, and since it's only pressed on a high RPM, hitting that rev limit, that constant on and off of the vibration in the engine actually shifts the reluctor wheel and causes the reluctor wheel to come out of position, and the car doesn't know the true camshaft position. So then the ECU says, hey, there's a cam to cam timing correlation code. It's very common for a P016. So, what is the average? I want to make sure the timer is still working. So, I forgot to mention Chris. Yeah, Chris is you're also doing camshafts. But both are doing Kelford stage 1s, and it's going to be some nice numbers. Now, Chris, we know you're going for a nice 60 to 130 number, right? Right. And you're also doing some suspension components, right?
Yeah.
You've gone the complete flip around from wanting to sell the car, and I literally told Chris, like, yo, don't sell it. He's like, I want to sell it, and I'm like, don't sell it. I'm telling you, this was a back and forth conversation. I was like, I promise. I told him, I promise you, when it's fixed, you're gonna love the car all over again.
Yeah. So, the car was legit up for sale. Like, it was up for sale already on Facebook Marketplace and some other places. I was losing like every race. The car sucked. Then the car was trash. The tune was trash. So after John fixed it, I finally started winning some good races. And what kind of hooked me onto the car, and I made sure I didn't want to sell the car afterwards, was when I raced the GTRs. And seeing as how close I was with like minimal amount of money put into the car against a GTR.
Yeah, that's the whole reason I built mine. Look at it.
Yeah.
How powerful.
I was like, easy. Yeah. This is a good platform.
So for reference, a lot of people don't understand. Like, we come from Logan's. This is Logan's first major build, but Chris's and I have been through money pit level of stuff before. And but this is also not just about the FK8. Your S2000 build, right? You had an S2000 before this, and you went through
fully built,
right?
Sleeved
the whole 9 yards, and built not once but twice. And this is the struggle, and this is what makes people want to sell a car. But here's the thing, and this is kind of a little bit I want to say here about, as for advice, I will only point people to the direction of what I know functions 1,000%, right? And if we pick that direction and you want to go, you're going to get that goal, provided you follow that direction. Trust me, guys, I have spent more money as a single individual on R&D than any other single individual, and I've spent more money in R&D than many other big companies. Not everything is just a single number on a dyno either, is it? Because how much power did that GTR make that you were within like half a car length on the wrong tire, no less, in my mind?
Yeah,
How much? To the wheel, 650 to the wheel.
650 to
And
the
you made how much at the time?
516.
Right. And you have a manual trans, and he has a full-on, as you know, a GTR trans.
DCT. Yeah.
So, Logan, you are doing more extravagant. So your engine block is
CSS.
Okay, and your piston and rod choice.
Yeah, CP Carrillo pistons 10 to 186 and a half mil for the deck guard. You got to bore it out half a mil because it squeezes the top. And then Sands 4340 900 horsepower rods, ACL race bearings. Got the 4-piston ported oil pump. Then we shimmed it to Unit 2 baffled oil pan with a pressure sensor. FK TD ported head, Headmaster ported head. Kelford Stage 1s, Ferrea valve train, and Supertech seals. So it's fully built.
Now, so let's just kind of, I don't mean to interject, but you're doing a little bit different 60 to 130 because you have what manifold?
Prackworks.
Now we all know, for those who've watched, the Prackworks manifold at like 7,000 RPM can pick up, depending on the camshaft setup, like 60, 70 horsepower on the same boost.
Never forget the text he sent me. You might want to consider Prackworks. I think it was like 40 or 50, and I'm like, man, it looks good. That red and black would fit right into the engine base. So, yeah, here we go.
Yeah,
it continues. Something else to buy.
So like, I think I was picked up, and everybody was like, oh man, that's BS. They'll never do that. And then Red Star did it, and then did it after I did it. After I did it, and then everyone's like, oh yeah, now it's real apparently, you know, I did it, right?
I still remember that.
Yeah, everyone's like, oh, it's white. No, it's legit, right? If you haven't, so you're doing a 25 660, but with a different exhaust housing.
Yeah, 92.
So
flow.
For the exhaust housing is going to represent a lot of your high-end horsepower. If you guys don't know, like just the MHI Stage 2, the compressor is only a couple millimeters bigger, but the turbine side is like 6-7 millimeters bigger. This aids in your RPM and high horsepower a lot. Now, obviously, you can go too big, but Logan, you're going to do what, other than you have stock gears, but what's different in your trans?
A quart final.
So the
trans or
quart final, aka FL5 final, this is going to give you a better option for 6130 on your particular setup because you don't have to rev to how many RPM to get to 130?
82.
Yeah, 8,000, 8,100, depending on the tire size. So, and unfortunately, these are just some of the struggles and part about building a car. I mean, I've been through it too. We all know it. Just the thing is, Chris is going to stay for now stock bottom end for now, which we've proven plenty of times. Even longevity wise, 600 stock bottom end is legitimately possible. Like, it really is possible. This is not, people sit there, and I know some people see some other numbers, some other places they don't see the car run. These guys get on their car. I'm telling you, Logan, yeah, that poor car, man. I don't even know how it's still in one piece.
He'd be on the phone with me. I'd be traveling down. I do a poll, and you'd be like, "You having fun?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah."
Oh yeah. Every time I was on the phone,
I took it over to a buddy of mine, man, and it was over a span of like 10 miles. I did a poll like every mile. It had to be almost a dozen polls. I just can't get enough of it.
Poor car, and the bottom end, the stock bottom end is fine, man. It's just that camshaft reluctor, You keep, so the reluctor, the two ways to get damaged, hitting the rev limiter at really high RPM, just bouncing off the rev limiter. Misshifting can kind of cause it. That can happen. That's usually what pushes it over the edge. But banging a rev limiter constant, that's not a good thing. With an aftermarket cam, yes, you can do it because it's no longer pressed on, but it still is harder on other components, right? So that's part of that. So, Chris, you're also doing some suspension stuff. You do currently have springs in the car, right? What springs?
I bought Pro S's.
And you're adding to the suspension at this point. You're adding
white line anti-lift kit, and
you're changing the tires. So changing the tires. So I'm an R888 person, all right, and I'll state this: below 50 degrees temperature outside, there are better tires for below 50 degrees. But before people scream, NTO1s. For the people who don't know, okay, for your NTO1 lovers that hate R888s, I think I should let you guys know, that they're both made by Toyo tires. So before you guys scream about hating this left and right, and I've been saying this and sit there and knock our AAA, so just to let you know they're both made by Toyo tires, and that the compounds are designed just a hair different. Nittos will do slightly better initially cold, but I can assure you a hot R888 is the way to go. So the biggest problem is going to be, what's the biggest problem? What does everybody do wrong with the R888s? The first,
too high of a pressure. Even mine was a little high when he checked them. You know, you want
so
to get them.
what do you run them generally at now when you're driving an initially cold pressure? About
28 or so, 30 at most. I had them aired up to I think about 32.
So, for reference, depending on the width of the tire, this can play a role. And this is where the struggles come in, though. People go like, I got to set an R888s, and we're out like 4,000 miles. Well, you got them at 33 PSI
Right.
cold, and you burn the tire clean off. Some tires wear better at lower initial pressures. You have to know the size of the tire versus the weight of the car. I drive around on 26 to 27 pounds of tire pressure. So that's normal because when the tire gets warm, it will come up to pressure, and an R888 has a stiffer sidewall. You run all that tire pressure and you turn the tire into a balloon when it gets hot, and you have this tread wear that went from a 275 to a 235. No wonder it doesn't stick. So you have to know your tire pressures. What's your preferred tuning strategy? Torque limiting or P8 tables? Neither.
Fast.
Yeah, so neither. He's like fast, yeah. for a tuning
So
method.
real quick, the set of R888s on my car, I did them all the way around. Some people don't like to. I like it. It looks cool. You know, you can rotate them. They've lasted 7,000 to 8,000 miles. I measured the tread on them. I believe it's half more. So I should get 15,000 out of these. I'm not using.
Remember, I said he beat the balls
They
off of
spin
it.
top of third because mine was stock suspension for a while. It's on Swiss springs now, and I got a few other things I'm going to do to it. But they
Yeah,
go
and
fast.
he just spun the tires off, but because he didn't overinflate them, they rotated them, they lasted. And so he's probably going to get at least another 4 to 5,000 miles out of them before he's going to actually need a set of tires.
Yeah.
So as far as for tuning strategy, I will, if I'm doing PID tuning, I will torque limit lower gears like second and third, and it depends on the suspension and tire setup. If we're doing a traction control strategy tune, what I will do is, if I can't tame it by the PID, I will pull just enough boost out of it to tame it so that it doesn't surge. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you get a surging traction control, and the car is like, that is not conducive to being as fast as you can possibly be. So that's part of it. Now, initially, like if you change the power level, you may need to change your PID tuning. So your torque limiting, now as far as torque limiting per keeping parts alive, that depends on the setup. But generally, 450 on a jet, it doesn't matter if it's a Nitto NT01. Like for reference, I know somebody on NT01s, he makes 450 torque, and he's got Swiss springs on it, and it still blows the tires off on a 275 Nitto on a 17-inch wheel. So 450 torque, now that is a perfect reference. If you are making 450 torque and you're not spinning your 275 Nitto, maybe you're not making 450 torque. It's kind of really just that clear, you know?
Yeah.
So, that's a lot of torque to hold down on a stock trans.
That's it.
So,
That's
yeah, 450 torque at 5,000 RPM, that's a little bit steep, right? So, I gotta say, 450 torque at that's, I mean, Chris, you're at what, 440? Around there?
I think
450. Around the 5,000 mark.
wasn't it
Yeah.
445?
Yeah,
I
probably
think
around
it
there.
Yeah,
was
you're pushing,
445.
it's steep, and he said,
Mine-
leave it. And I was like, okay.
My tune was fun on the street, but on the dyno, I think we did 420, 430, I think, around there. So
Yeah, but you had better overall. Well, you were still stock suspension at that time, so keeping
Yeah.
keeping the tire down was a little bit tougher at that point.
yeah,
Right.
still did
So,
pretty
but
good.
Chris's tires are, well, his tires currently are not great, right? So that pretty much sums up like a lot of the struggle bills that they had, and it just goes to show that like, you know, the gentlemen have done nothing but move their bills forward after meeting me, right? And
Can't quit.
No.
I've got them. I've got them hooked,
Yeah.
right? I've got them hooked, but Chris was gonna try to go other ways than. I can't tell all the info now, right? But he was gonna go a different way, and I said, don't spend the money twice. I like to make money as much as the next guy, but I will be the first one to tell you, I will ask you, and this is not something that a lot of other people will do, is a lot of the times you say you want to do this, this, and this, and I say, what's your end goal, right? And if you say your end goal is something like 600 wheel horsepower, and then you say, I want to do that on stock motor, I'm going to be like, yeah, then you got a nitrous button? Stock motor, stock cam? Cool, I'm going to tell you the easiest way to get there, but you're going to need cams and valve train to do a legit 600, you know. But point is, don't just always go to somebody who says to you, oh, I want to do this, this, and this, and right, and they don't ask you, what's your goal, right? Or say, I want to make 500 horsepower, but okay, if they don't ask you what fuel are you on, you know, the right questions will often give you the result you're after. And a good guidance person will give you, a person who wants to build your car and cares about your build, will ask you questions about what's your horsepower goal. They'll ask you, you know, what's your end goal? You know, you might have a current horsepower, but what are you using the car for? Are you using for roll racing? Are you using for track event, right? And I'll tell you, for track use, guys, 450 torque is too much. It's too much because you're just going to knock the tires off. So, but I think that pretty much covers what you went through and some of the struggles you went through. Some of the struggles you went through were simply because you bought a car used, and when you bought it used, they'd been already kind of beat up
14,000 miles, and they had done mods, and I could just, yeah.
They had done mods, and you bought it, someone modded. And Chris, unfortunately, has been in those situations as somebody that was considered reputable in his local area. And if I remember correctly, what they had done wrong was they had put butt connectors, but it was a non-shrink wrap style, correct?
Yeah, and that was the second mechanic. I went to 3 mechanics to try and fix my car, and it just ran like
Dog
doo-doo. Yeah.
Well, I wonder if it's that typical use 2 O-rings and your DW300C thing started the problem. I'm willing to bet that might have been
Something
the
like
initial
that,
problem.
yeah.
And then that basically, the reason the car stopped running was because it had used the regular style butt connectors inside of fuel, which is so wrong. It's so wrong. So the plastic slides right off of the connector, and then you have bare wires exposed. The wires were exposed and touching inside the fuel, shorting out. And when you short the fuel pump fuse out, the car won't crank either. So not only will it not start, it won't crank either. You get the key, you get nothing. So just for reference to some of those that have that problem, and as I explained, the P0016 code, what is this? I want power plateau from 5,000, from 5K to 7,200 or 400 horsepower. Don't you mean you want a torque plateau from 5K to 72K of 400 torque? Which is, by the way, I've proven is fantastic for track use. So, and the rule is like, what's better, torque or horsepower for track use? Well, you gotta have some torque, but I promise you, if you can keep a nice torque plateau and more horsepower, that's gonna be faster. Alright, gentlemen, it's late for everybody. Everybody here is tired. This was just a random thing I definitely wanted to do an interview with Chris to talk about the fact he was literally going to sell the car. And that was kind of important to me to tell people, like, hey, don't give up, right? Because I've been through it. Chris has been through it. Chris went through it his S2000, but unfortunately he didn't have somebody to point him in the right direction to build it. And I don't know what happened with that build. Unfortunately, I didn't know Chris at that point. And Logan, this is his first serious build and his first serious car.
Yeah.
So, but he's doing many things that many of us wish we could have done at a younger age. So, And I'm just grateful that they both they started out as business, and these guys turned into friends. So, and I just wanted to share the experience. What are you guys doing over here? Hey, what's going on over here? Well, I might get demonetized. Oh, wait, I'm demonetized.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
No, it don't matter. I don't get demonetized. You probably could have F-bombed the whole video, but it wouldn't have mattered because I'm not monetized anyway.
We gotta do like an F-bomb live next where we just ran about the cars.
So I'm going to do this just this one time. We're going to call it the troll of the day, okay? The troll of the day. The troll of the day. How to know you might be talking to the wrong person. You ask them to put a wideband into the dyno, and they go, where do I put it? I'm like, but you own the dyno. I don't use that particular dyno. I don't know where the input reads on the back. I don't have the inputs in front of me. And then they go off the inputs and they go, they said, basically, it was the eddy current input, and then the next one is, mind you, this is just I'm not going to get into it, but basically they said, it says lambda 1, lambda 2 input, and it was right there, and they had no idea that lambda meant wideband. And for anybody that owns a dyno, you really should know that lambda input is a wideband input. And especially for people who are going to call themselves tuners and stuff, you should really know that exists. And I'm going to call that the troll of the day because, man, you should really know that if you're a tuner and you don't know on your own dyno that lambda input is the place where the wideband goes. And I'm going to sign out on that fact, and I'm not going to say no more on that, man, because I just can't. Ladies and gentlemen, gotta run. Hope you enjoyed it, the interview, and I'll see y'all later.
That was dope.
Yeah, I love how you just